The Millionaire's Christmas Miracle, a homeless boy's journey to hope. Clavish mysteries. On a cold Christmas night, when lights twinkled across the city, Tobias, a homeless boy, huddled on the street with an empty stomach and bare feet. But his life changed when he met Theodore, a millionaire full of compassion. The person decided to take him home to avoid the cold weather. However, an unexpected incident causes conflicts to rise, placing Tobias in a position of suspicion. Will Theodore's kindness be strong enough to overcome prejudice and protect the boy? Let's explore this emotional story. The bitter cold of Christmas Eve pervades the space, seeping through every layer of clothing and freezing the windows of the bustling city. Laughter and festive music echoed everywhere, but Tobias, an 8-year-old boy with tattered clothes and bare feet, seemed unaware. He wandered aimlessly on the snow-covered sidewalks, his small hands clutching his hungry stomach. Every step seemed heavier, due to the torment of hunger and the surrounding cold, but the world around him seemed to not care about a child like him. Tobias stopped in front of a bakery, his face pressed against the cold glass. The smell of freshly baked bread and sweet cakes filled the air, making his stomach rumble even more. Inside, families sit around warm tables, sharing desserts and smiles. Tobias imagined himself sitting there, holding a piece of cake, his stomach full for the first time. But the glass was like a wall separating him from the world he only dared to dream about. The reflection in the glass, his thin, dusty face, reminded him of who he was, a child without a home, without hope. "Go away, you brat." A man walked out of the store, shouting angrily. He held a broom and threatened to sweep him away. Tobias jumped back in surprise, his face red with embarrassment. "Go find trouble somewhere else." He didn't respond, just bowed his head and quietly left, his bare feet leaving faint traces on the thin layer of snow. All around, children in bright scarves and warm mittens played with new toys, laughter echoing in the icy air. A ball rolled to Tobias's feet, and for a moment, his eyes lit up. He picked up the ball, a thin smile on his lips. But before he could enjoy the fun, a boy wearing a bright blue jacket snatched the ball back. "Don't touch our things, you dirty thing," the other boy shouted, wiping the ball as if Tobias had soiled it. Laughter erupted from the children, and Tobias felt the words stab like needles into his heart. He squeezed his small hands but said nothing. "What can I say? His voice is too small, and the world is too noisy." Tears welled up in Tobias's eyes, but he swallowed them back, determined not to cry. Crying doesn't fill your stomach, nor does it change the way people look at you. The sun gradually disappeared, and the city lights began to twinkle. Tobias stumbled into an alley, looking for something, anything, to eat. The stench of garbage made him want to vomit, but the hunger was stronger than the disgust. He rummaged through a trash can, his hands shaking from the cold, digging through the extra trash bags. A piece of old bread, covered with dirt, came into view. He wiped it cleanly and then took a bite. The piece of cake was dry, hard, and carried the taste of humiliation, but it was all he had. "It's disgusting," a man in a suit said, wincing. "Kids like this dirty the whole city." Tobias paused, his small hands squeezing the piece of cake. Those words cut deep into his heart, deeper than the cold. He crouched lower into the darkness, as if disappearing might protect him from everyone's scornful eyes. Night fell, and the cold seemed to penetrate every fiber of my body. Tobias found shelter under an awning, huddling against the cold wind. Her small legs were pulled close to her chest, her weak breathing created thin clouds of smoke in the cold air. Around them, other homeless people also sat silently, their faces tired and empty, with no hope left. An older man muttered angrily, "Go away, kid. This corner is mine." Tobias quietly trudged to another corner, trying to avoid causing more trouble. The city was still bustling, not paying any attention to the boy trembling in the dark. Tobias raised his eyes, looking at the distant stars. They look so close yet so far away, like the life he longs for. A tear rolled down his cheek as he whispered into the cold air, I just hope tomorrow will be different. At dawn, pale yellow rays of sunlight penetrate the rooftops, painting the city with gentle light. Tobias stirred, his legs stiff from the cold. He rubbed his eyes, his body weak from hunger and fatigue. The streets were starting to get crowded, and the smell of hot coffee and fragrant pastries made his stomach churn. He wandered aimlessly, reaching out his trembling little hand to ask for a coin or a piece of bread from strangers. "Madam, please help me," he mumbled to a woman wearing an expensive coat. She glanced at him briefly, then threw an apple on the ground. The apple rolled into the dirty puddle, and Tobias stopped, staring at it as if in mockery. "Be grateful, kid," the woman said and walked away. Tobias bent down to pick up the apple, but before he could touch it, a foot kicked it away. "Work and eat, kid, don't stand here and bother us," a gruff voice said. Tobias raised his head and saw a man frowning at him. He pursed his lips, trying to stop his tears. "I'm just a kid," he said softly, but no one seemed to hear, or care. The whole day passed in the biting cold. Tobias sat down on the sidewalk, his legs shaking, watching the people rushing by. He felt like a shadow, invisible and forgotten. But then, in the middle of the bustling crowd, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes stopped. He wore an elegant coat, and his presence exuded majesty. "What's your name?" the man asked, kneeling down to Tobias's eye level. His voice was warm and close, making Tobias hesitate, not knowing if this was a trap. "Tobias," he mumbled, clutching his tattered shirt. The man's eyes softened. "Tobias, why are you here in this cold?" "I have nowhere to go," Tobias admitted, his voice weak, almost inaudible. His eyes looked down at his shiny shoes, feeling like he wasn't worthy of standing near him. The man nodded, thought for a moment, then held out his hand. "Go with me. I think you need a hot meal and a warm place to rest." Tobias looked at that hand, his heart pounding. No one had ever shown him such kindness. "Is this real? Can you trust this man?" I don't want to bother you," he said, his voice shaking. The man smiled gently. "I'm not bothering you at all, Tobias. I'm Theodore, and I'm here to help you. Come on, let's get out of this cold." After a moment of hesitation, Tobias placed his small hand in Theodore's. The warmth of his hand enveloped him, and for the first time in a long time, Tobias felt a glimmer of hope in his heart. He didn't know where this man would take him, but Theodore's eyes made him believe that perhaps this was the beginning of a miracle he had longed for under the stars. The door of the villa slowly opened, revealing a warm space filled with gentle golden light. Tobias stood still, his eyes following every luxurious detail in the house. The Christmas tree was decorated with sparkling baubles, the lights flickered like little stars, and the fire in the fireplace danced, bringing warmth he had never felt before. "Come in, Tobias," Theodore's voice said from behind, soft but encouraging. He closed the door to prevent the cold outside from coming in, then took off his coat and hung it on the rack. "Your house is also my house tonight." Tobias hesitantly stepped in, his bare feet gingerly touching the warm floor. He worriedly looked down at his dirty feet, afraid that they might dirty the place. But Theodore said nothing, just smiled when he saw his worried look. Luna, Theodore's wife, came out of the kitchen. She is a woman with curly brown hair and bright, warm eyes. When she saw Tobias, she frowned slightly because of his fragility and smallness, but immediately smiled gently. "Are you Tobias?" She bent down and put her hand on his shoulder. "Welcome to my uncle's house. You must be very cold and hungry." Tobias nodded, his eyes sparkling but still hesitant, as if he couldn't believe this was true. Luna led him into the living room, where the soft sofa was waiting. Before he could sit down, Luna turned to Theodore. "I'll go make a bowl of hot soup for the boy. Please talk to him." When Luna left, Theodore pulled a chair closer and sat across from Tobias. The boy looked down at the floor, his small hand clutching his torn shirt. You don't need to worry, Tobias, Theodore said, his voice low and warm. This is a safe place. No one here will yell at you or hurt you. Tobias looked up, his eyes hesitant but hopeful. But, why did you help me? No one helped me before. Theodore sat back, his eyes shining with contemplation. I help you because I have seen the harshness of life. When I was young, I didn't have many things in my hands, but a stranger helped me get through the most difficult times. And now, I want to do it for you. Tobias nodded, his heart gradually warmed by the sincere words. Luna returned with a bowl of hot soup and a slice of soft bread. Tobias ate greedily, and each spoonful of soup seemed to bring him new life. Luna stood watching him eat, her eyes could not hide her sympathy. Where do you live, Tobias? Luna asked softly. Do you have any family? Tobias stopped eating and put down his spoon. His eyes lowered, and his voice seemed to disappear into the air. I don't have anyone. I just live on the street. All I had was my old backpack, but that was taken away too. Luna knelt down next to Tobias, placing her hand on his arm. From now on, you won't have to live like that anymore. Tonight you are here, and together we will find a way to give you a better future. That night, Tobias slept in a small, cozy room with a soft bed and warm blankets. He lay down, feeling the softness of the pillow, and his eyes began to close. But before falling asleep, a strange feeling welled up in his heart. It wasn't fear, but something new, safety. In the living room, Theodore and Luna sat side by side, the firelight from the fireplace reflecting on their faces. Luna sighed softly. The boy is so pitiful. I can't imagine what he went through. Theo nodded. Me too. But I believe we can help it. Tobias needs to know that there is still kindness and hope in this world. Luna smiled, resting her head on her husband's shoulder. We will do it, brother. We will give the boy a chance. The next morning, Tobias woke up to the smell of toast and coffee coming from the kitchen. He rubbed his eyes, sat up in the warm bed, and looked around the room. This simple but warm space made him feel like he was dreaming. Walking down to the kitchen, Tobias saw Luna baking bread and Theodore reading the newspaper. They smiled when they saw him enter. Sit down here, Tobias, Luna said, pulling out a chair for him. I made you some bread and hot milk. Tobias sat down, carefully as if afraid of breaking something. He held the glass of milk with both hands and drank in small sips, a warm feeling spreading throughout his body. Do you want to stay with us, Tobias? Theodore asked, his voice filled with encouragement. Tobias put down the cup, his eyes full of surprise. Really? Won't you chase me away? No, Tobias, Luna replied, smiling gently. This home will always be a place you can return to. Tobias felt a lump in his throat. He didn't know what to say other than one short word. Thank. Sunlight shines through the window, illuminating Tobias's small face. For the first time in many days, he truly smiled, a smile full of hope. In the following days, Tobias began to get used to his new life at Theodore and Luna's house. For him, this was not just a shelter, but a real home, something he had never had before. The boy was well fed, slept in a warm bed, and was even bought some new clothes by Luna. Tobias felt like he was living in a dream, but deep inside, he was still worried that everything could disappear at any moment. One morning, Theodore walked into the living room, where Tobias was playing with a toy car that Luna had given him. Tobias, he said, his voice low but gentle. Have you thought about going to school? Tobias raised his head, his eyes full of surprise. Go to school? But I've never been to school. I don't know what to do. Theodore sat down next to him, placing his hand on his shoulder. No problem. Everyone has a first time. I will help you. I believe that you can study very well, and one day, you will do great things. Tobias felt a little scared, but Theodore's encouraging eyes gave him confidence. "I'll try," he said softly, but there was determination in his voice. On the first day of school, Tobias felt nervous. He wore the new clothes that Luna prepared, and Theodore personally took him to school. The school looked big and crowded, with children running around the yard. Tobias gently held Theodore's hand, as if looking for comfort. "You don't need to be afraid," Theodore said, looking down at him. "You just need to do your best. And remember, no matter what happens, Uncle and Miss Luna are always here." Tobias nodded, released Theodore's hand and walked into the schoolyard. At first, he felt out of place among the other children, but his curiosity and shy smile quickly attracted attention. A few classmates approached and started asking questions, and Tobias gradually felt more comfortable. When he returned home in the afternoon, Luna prepared a sumptuous dinner to celebrate. "How was your first day, Tobias?" she asked, as he sat at the table. Tobias gave a small smile. "It's not as bad as you thought. There are some very good friends. I think I'll like it there." Theodore smiled and raised his glass of water. "Great. This is just the beginning, Tobias. I believe you will do great things." As time passed, Tobias improved more and more. He studied hard, and with encouragement from Theodore and Luna, he gradually regained his confidence. One day, he brought home a test with the highest score in the class. When he showed the paper to Theodore, he couldn't hide his pride. "You did great, Tobias," Theodore said, patting his shoulder. "You have proven that nothing is impossible when you try." "I just want to make you and Miss Luna proud," Tobias said, eyes sparkling. Luna walked over and hugged him. "You did it, Tobias. Not only does it make us proud, but it also makes you proud. The most important thing is that I overcame difficulties that few people can do." The next Christmas season came faster than Tobias expected. This time, instead of standing outside the window looking in, he was part of the family. Theodore and Luna decorated the Christmas tree with him, and the whole family gathered around the fireplace, telling each other old stories. Christmas Eve, after a cozy dinner, Theodore placed a large gift box in front of Tobias. "Open it," he said, a gentle smile on his face. Tobias opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a brand new bicycle, bright red, just like he had dreamed of. He looked up, tears filling his eyes. "Really? It's yours?" "That's right," Theodore said. "You have worked very hard and deserve this." Tobias jumped up and hugged Theodore and Luna, tears of happiness rolling down his cheeks. "Thank you, Uncle. Thank you. I promise to take good care of it." Not only Tobias changes, but Theodore and Luna also feel that their lives are enriched because of him. Tobias brought a new light to the house, and reminded them that life becomes most meaningful when we share love and hope with others. From a boy wandering the streets, Tobias found family, love, and hope. And every Christmas season, when he looked up at the sparkling pine tree, he always thought to himself, "It's never too late to believe in miracles." The warm light from the Christmas tree glowed in the small living room, where Tobias was sitting next to Theodore and Luna, holding a cup of hot cocoa. A year has passed since the boy was brought into this home, away from the cold and lonely days on the street. Over the course of a year, Tobias changed completely. From a scared and lost boy, he has now become a confident young man, with a heart full of dreams. Theodore and Luna not only gave Tobias a home, but also a sense of belonging, a priceless gift that Tobias will carry with him throughout his life. This story is not only a boy's journey of change, but also a testament to the extraordinary power of kindness and second chances. It reminds us that sometimes, all a person needs is a helping hand to change their life. Theodore and Luna's decision to take in Tobias not only changed his life but also enriched their own, proving that acts of kindness can heal both the giver and the receiver. Okay. As Tobias looked up at the twinkling lights from the Christmas tree, he turned to Theodore and Luna, his eyes sparkling with gratitude. "I will never forget what you two did for me," Tobias whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "One day, I want to help others, the same way you two helped me." Theodore smiled warmly, placing his hand on Tobias's shoulder. "You've been doing that, Tobias. Every small step you take inspires others to believe in the power of love and kindness. Never stop spreading that light." This story reminds us that everyone has the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. By choosing kindness, you can create waves of hope that spread farther than you think. So friends, what can you do today to spread kindness? Who in your life needs a helping hand or a word of encouragement? If this story has inspired you, please share it with friends and family. Don't forget to press prefer and subscribe to Clavish Mysteries channel, which brings you stories full of emotion, hope and change. What would you do if you were in Theodore's situation? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section. Do you believe in the power of second chances? Share your thoughts with us, we'd love to hear. Stay tuned for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the beauty and extraordinary power of the human spirit. Thank you for watching, and remember, one small act of kindness can change the world.